Ooh, Dread Queen Rathian! Molten Tigrex? Hell yeah! Molten Zinogre? Wait, Molten Zinogre? Wait, that wasn't even Molten Tigrex either! That was a Dragon Element Tigrex! Color-changing Monsties are back! Ladies, gentlemen, and Monsties of all ages, today is a big day in the Monster Hunter community with the big Capcom showcase that happened earlier on. There was a big title update 4 news bit of drop for Monster Hunter Wilds that we've already covered on the channel, and that's the stuff that I stay blind to. But on the other side of things, we did also have massive Monster Hunter Stories 3 reveals, which is the thing that Josh is staying blind to, so I get to go through all the new stuff that we learned about and gush about how awesome it looks because I am just getting more and more hype for this game every time they show us more. For the most part, until now, they've focused a lot on story, environments, and characters and their reveals about the game, with minor gameplay stuff being found out about due to gameplay demo footage from events and stuff like that, but now they're actually revealing proper new mechanics and they are looking pretty fantastic. That said, they had a new trailer, which you've been seeing playing in the background so far, and then they just give us a lot more details about the mechanics that were shown off inside of the trailer too. So let's just break down and explain what the new stuff is that's going on, what is new, talk about what it might mean beyond what we have confirmed in some cases too. That said, the main focus of this trailer and presentation was a new mechanic called habitat restoration. Story-wise, this is sort of perfect, honestly. It completely just shows the difference between monster hunters and monster riders, and in this game specifically, the rangers. Hunters in mainline Monster Hunter do their best to protect nature by removing direct threats to it. The riders essentially try to rebuild nature and help the natural order of things in an entirely sort of almost opposite manner, and I think this is an awesome way to realize that in game. Early trailers essentially described Rathalos in this region of the world as being extremely endangered creatures, and apparently they aren't the only endangered monsters that exist. There are powered up special monsters called invasive monsters. Examples shown here were an Arzuros and then also a Yongaruga, which both had special attacks. The Arzuros would eat honey and then have goddamn honey like arm blades that he fires at you, and then there's a plesioth who fires a 5-way splitting water beam, of course, because why would it not be splitting 5 ways? Plesioth is definitely not dangerous enough without that, right? When you defeat an invasive species in combat, it will retreat to its den, and they've said that the mechanics for defeating an invasive species are different than normal monsters, but not told us what that is yet. That said, when you follow it to the den, it will be sleeping on a nest where you can find a special new type of Monstie egg called an endangered egg. This is where you can find endangered species, like Rathian here is described to be an endangered species. This then connects to a much larger system, which is called habitat restoration. By finding eggs of endangered Monsties, or other Monsties too, you can release them into the wild after hatching them. For endangered Monsties, you have to release a set number before you can eventually hatch them to be actual Monsties that you can keep for yourself. That said, releasing Monsties into the wild is done in specific areas. You get to choose what part of the map you do that to, and doing that will rank up not only that monster's position within the region, because you're basically populating that area with that monster, but it will also seemingly level up the region as a whole, which is a system called ecosystem rank. As you increase the ecosystem rank of an area, eggs will be easier to find, they will be more potent when you find them, and it also seems like Monsties hatched in those areas will then have a chance of inheriting bonus powers from the region as well, which we saw a very brief glimpse at, but there's something here called egg powers, which we believe that's related to. As for ranking up that specific Monstie's position within the region, once you reach a specific rank for them, its eggs will then have a chance of taking on the element of that region, of that area, bringing in a new system, or sort of new system, called dual element Monsties. There was something similar to this in Stories 1 where you can convert the element of a Monstie, and you could do some parts of the same type of thing in Stories 2 with gene manipulation, but it awkwardly just did not work right at all. Like, you could change the Monstie color at lower levels specifically, but because of the way it worked, as you had to devote like all of your gene slots to specific choices for the purpose of changing their color, some Monsties barely changed colors at all, some did change color in the overworld but not in actual battles, and then for most Monsties, just raw leveling up growth stats would outscale any changes that you made and undo the element swap that you did in the end anyway. So it was clearly just not a system that they actually intended to have in the game, probably something that was scrapped early in development. But in Stories 3, this system, the dual element system, is straight up tied to how you manage your map, where you choose to release what Monstie species, and the result is that monsters that have multiple element types and have full-on on different color schemes as a result. It feels way more intentional than it ever has in the series, especially as it is a direct result of overarching gameplay decisions that we make, and so it's almost like we are creating a subspecies in a specific region, rather than just like gene editing a single member of the regular species. In the trailer, we see a few examples of this, but probably the most sort of impactful one is the reveal of Dread Queen Rathian when they are first talking about this system. This seems to imply that if an area were to have poison as its element, and you restore a bunch of Rathians in that area, that is how you would then unlock the ability to find Dread Queen Rathian. So rather than a deviant being an endgame mechanic or a hidden thing in a specific location, it is something that you personally choose to work towards with knowledge of the monsties that you would want to have yourself. That said, the color change monsties we got to see some glimpses of. Here is Nargacuga. This one's pretty subtle. It's like the actual blades of the wings that change. Normally they're more silvery gray. These ones are yellow, gold, bronzy type of coloring, which makes me think this is a thunder element infused Nargacuga. Legiacris, who is being ridden underwater, by the way, I do feel the need to mention that part here. He is riding underwater, and it could just be like a forced transition, but I feel like this wasn't clocked by a lot of people amidst the rest of the excitement going on here. But to me, this almost implies we might get underwater exploration or even underwater combat with the swimming monsties. Except this Legiacris is a little bit bluer, whiter than normal, so I'd guess he is ice infused probably. Then Mizitsune, this one is really hard to tell from the specific angle with the moon in the back, but I would guess ice infused again on this one. Possibly thunder infused, but hard to say for sure. I think ice is more likely. After that, we have something a lot of people, including myself at first glance, thought might be Molten Tigrex, which would have been incredible, but here's Molten Tigrex from Stories 2. Notice a few key differences here. Green eyes instead of blue, wing pattern doesn't match, and the claws on this one from Stories 3's trailer are not blue. Molten Tigrex has blue claws, and that is an important part of showing the way that he functions, because these claws are what are used to explode his blast powder. Okay, nerdiness aside, this isn't Molten Tigrex. Instead, it is a really cool looking dragon dual element Tigrex. Then we have Zinogre, and this one could either be dragon or fire. I'm not 100% sure. The face looks a bit more like dragon element, but the body looks a bit more muted orangey red, which is much closer to how fire element is represented, as we get to see with this Tobikadachi here, who is fire dual element, this chatacabra, who by the way looks cute as all hell, but he's also fire element, and then this fire dual element Velocidrome as well. The final thing in the trailer itself then is the reveal of a couple of new characters, a Palico and her partner. Based on the reveal, it feels like this is supposed to be someone that we would recognize, and the two closest looking characters from previous games in the series are Kyle and Roberto. But it clearly is not Kyle himself, I don't think, though I could imagine it being like Kyle's grandchild or something along those lines. Roberto, I think, matches the energy of this character, the way that they first act, but different eye colors, stuff like that, so while it is possible he could also just instead be a descendant of Roberto, I think Kyle is probably more likely. But I also think that this is entirely just speculation, of course, that I've done, only because of the way that they showed this character, because it feels like they're trying to do a big reveal with him. That said, we also had a little showcase explaining these mechanics after the trailer was shown, and while I've already talked about that and explained the actual mechanics themselves, this means that we did have more footage that was shown. And so let's talk about all of the lesser announced new info, stuff like new monsters that were confirmed or at least semi-confirmed, or just fun things for the game that we haven't seen before. Moving back to the trailer, first to round back on it, we have this cut together scene here of some special attacks from various ranger partners that you'll be able to fight alongside, including the Pookie Stampede as an attack, which I think is just so adorable. And then we also did get to see Magnamalo's kinship attack during the trailer too, which I do feel the need to directly point out and show for anyone who did want to see what that looks like. Past that, let's talk about the monsties specifically. At the very end of the trailer, Somnacanth is mentioned by name, then is further confirmed when shown for a brief glimpse in the showcase after the trailer right here. Then we get into an egg pile just picking up a bunch of eggs, and this is very interesting. First up, what's that egg in the bottom left? Red and black with the fanged wyvern pattern. To me, this looks almost dead on like the egg design that I would choose for Odogaron. So it feels like he has high likelihood of being in Stories 3 right from that type of egg. Then in the bottom right, they also do actually pick this up in the writer's hand specifically. This is an entirely new egg pattern. This has not been an egg pattern in previous Stories game, which means it is a whole new monster category type. It could be Neopteran, but the colors don't match any Neopteran monster. It could be Cephalopod if they are crazy, but again, it does not match the color of any of the cephalopods that we have. Even Zhuwu would likely be blue and black instead of that creamy bone color and black that this egg is. That brings us to what I think is by far the most likely, which is Carapaceon. Carapaceon. I think we've got crab monsties, and that color pattern would be a dead ringer for Shogun Ceanataur. And I cannot express how happy I will be if that is true, because I would absolutely love to have an army of crabs to ride into battle. Then finally, this is a big one, but one that we did predict back when they first showed pre-order hairstyle rewards. We do in fact have Arkveld in the game from Monster Hunter Wilds. This is an incredible pull from the most recent entry for the Stories game, in my opinion, especially this one with the themes that were being shown here of endangered species being sort of recovered into being actual, like, functioning monsters in the ecosystem and getting a place to survive again, which for those who have played Wilds, of course, makes a hell of a lot of sense in the context of Arkveld. Will he be rideable? Will he be a proper Monstie? I have to assume so, but I've also learned to never assume that will be the case for things that exist as a fightable enemy monster in these games. It could only be an enemy, but I hope he's rideable, because I would love to have a little baby Arkveld. That just about does it for today then, everyone. A recap of everything new with Monster Hunter Stories 3 from the big Capcom showcase that happened earlier today. Personally, I'm just getting more and more excited for this game every time they tell us more about it, and this whole ecosystem rank, habitat restoration, invading species, endangered species, all this sort of set of systems makes this game feel like it's going to be far more robust and immersive than prior games in the Stories series, and in ways that I think just fit it incredibly well, thematically, and with the style of the game too. I hope you've all enjoyed this. Let me know your own thoughts on the new stuff in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.